My name is Susan Myers and I own Custom Quilts and Sewing Center in Hazlet, Michigan. Today we're going to do an overview of paper piecing. We participate in the row by row pattern this year and it's all paper piecing, and many people have said they don't know how to paper piece. Paper piecing is much easier to learn when someone actually shows you how to do it and you can sit and do it. So I'm going to give you a little overview and then we're going to teach you how to paper piece. So with paper piecing, there's a lot of different products available to use, but the one thing that you absolutely need is called an add-a-quarter ruler. Now the add-a-quarter ruler has a little lip on it, so that as you're folding and pressing, you're able to set this little lip right on the paper and cut an accurate 1/4 inch, which is very important for paper piecing. There are a lot of papers that you can buy to print your patterns on. The easiest is just copy paper. I always make a copy of my patterns so that if I mess up, I don't lose my original, and you always have copy paper available. Carol Doak has a great paper that you can buy that is a little bit easier to take off when you are done with your pattern. And there are some other ones available, and there are lots and lots of patterns. So these are some samples that we have from a company called Little Bits. These are small little samplers that you can make. They're at a great price point. They're only $6, but inside the pattern you get enough tissues to make 4 of these wall hangings. They're just small little 15 by 18, and they have the tissues in there, so you're paper piecing with tissues, which works really well and comes out easily when you're done. They have a wide variety. We carry a lot of different ones. This one is a fall. In the spring they have a lot of Christmas ones. They make great gifts at Christmas time, and they work really well with your scraps. There's a lot of books on the market. This book is 50 little paper piece blocks. They're 3-inch blocks, but you can blow them up to make them bigger if you wanted to. Any kind of paper piecing you get comes with patterns. You have the right to copy that. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, and come up with your own little wall hanging with lots of different blocks. Paper piecing is really great for small pieces and points. I love it because I get to overcut my fabric. I don't have to cut it exact because I have play in there, and it gives me a line to sew on, so I don't have to judge a 1/4 inch. If you are OCD and you don't like to waste a little bit of fabric, then paper piecing might not be for you. Today we're going to do the bird bath, which is a very simple paper piecing pattern. This is what the pattern looks like. It comes in 3 pieces. If you would like this pattern to do along with the video, you can drop us an email at CustomQuiltsInc@live.com and we'll get one out to you in the mail. So the tools that we're going to use today to do this particular pattern is our add-a-quarter ruler, which has our lip on it right here. I prefer to use a CGR 212, which is a Creative Grids ruler, and it is 2.5 inches wide by 12.5 inches long. Usually in paper piecing you don't need anything bigger than that because you're usually using smaller pieces. On the Creative Grids themselves, they have the gripper edges on the back so that it doesn't slide, but it has your 1/4 inch marked out on the side. And you need a rotary cutter and a pair of scissors, and we're going to use the scissors to cut our pattern. And then you're going to need an iron. There are 3 steps in paper piecing that you're going to have to remember. You're going to sew, press, and trim, and we'll get into that. But those are 3 things in that order that you have to remember for success in paper piecing. So we're going to do the bird bath, which I showed you it behind us. This particular pattern shows you what your colors are and where your colors sit and what size to cut them. Now these are general sizes. If you're working out of your scrap bucket, you can use whatever size works. You don't have to cut them down exactly. If they're a little bit bigger, that's just fine. Our pattern is in 3 pieces, so we're going to cut those 3 pieces apart. and do each piece separately. So this is where we use our scissors, and we're going to start with subunit 1, and you're just going to do a general cut on your pattern. You don't cut it out exactly, you just want a general cut, and you want your outside lines to stay where they are. This has our trim line on the outside. Everything that we sew will sew all the way out into the selvage area because you want it to stay in place, and you have to cover your selvage. We do a general cut, and then when we get all our pieces done, we do a precision cut. So this is our first piece. What I like to do before I start, I look through my pattern, and I decide what colors are what, and I write those right on my pattern. So this is my bird bath, and this is the bottom part of my bird bath, so I know that this corner and this corner are my background pieces, and this piece is going to be, in this particular bird bath, it's going to be a gray, so I'm going to write gray on there. As I get going, I want to make sure that I don't get my colors confused, so I always, on almost everything I do, I write down my colors right on my pattern. Paper piecing is like paint by number. We're going to sew by number, so we're going to start with piece 1 and piece 2. This is the front of our pattern. Our fabric goes on the back side of the pattern. We sew on this side where we can see our lines. The piece number 1 is always the most confusing, but don't worry, if you mess it up the first time, it happens. So I'm going to take piece number 1, which is my gray, and I'm going to kind of hold it up on my piece, and I want to make sure that my piece is wide enough to cover all of that piece number 1, and it has to extend a 1/4 inch past my sew lines. Always a 1/4 inch past the sew lines, and we want to make sure that it covers out into our selvage. So I know that this piece is going to cover that, so I'm just going to take my scissors or my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to cut that piece off there. Now piece number 3, if I want to measure it, I'm going to put my ruler on there, and my piece needs to be 3.5 inches, which is a little bit over my line to line. So I need 3.5 inches that way, and if I measure it this way, I need a piece that's at least 3.5. So I'm going to look at the scraps that I have, and this is my blue background, and I need a piece that's 3.5 inches, or I'm just going to lay it on there and I'm just going to hack it. I'm good at hacking. And this is where people with OCDs on wastage might not like paper piecing. So for piece number 1, I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to take the back of my fabric and put it on the back of my paper, and I'm going to make sure that when I look through my paper that I've got all of my seams covered. And normally I don't pin, but for today I'm going to pin piece number 1 because it's a fairly big piece and it's a little hard to hold. So I'm going to pin piece number 1 in place. Now piece number 2 is going to line up, and I'm going to put the front of piece number 2 to the front of piece number 1. Just like everything else, I'm going to put my fronts to front, and I'm going to sew on this line, which is the line between 1 and 2. And I always pin from the front because you can't see your pin on the back side. Now I'm going to sew on this line between 1 and 2, and I'm going to take my line all the way out past my selvage and all the way through past the selvage. Now with paper piecing, because we have to take the paper off when we're done, we want to use a smaller than normal stitch because it perforates the paper more and it makes it easier to take it out. So when I'm done, I have my sew line, and on the back I take my pin out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip piece number 2 over, and I'm going to make sure that I cover all of piece 2. So now I've sewn. Now I'm going to press. Now you always press, I think a lot of people finger press. I always press with an iron, and I want to make sure that this seam is nice and clean. If you don't get this opened nice and clean and you discover later that you didn't get it nice, open and clean, you can't fix it. Every piece that you put on locks in the piece before it, so you can't fix it without doing a lot of tearing out. So now that's my piece 1 and my piece 2. Now I am going to trim. Trimming, I need to sew piece 3 on. Between piece 2 and 3, I'm going to fold my paper right on that line. So I'm going to fold that piece of paper down on that line, and I'm going to use my handy dandy add a quarter ruler, and I'm going to slide it right onto that piece of paper. Every time I slide it on there, it's going to give me a 1/4 inch, perfect 1/4 inch, and I'm going to trim it, and then I'm going to open it back up. Now I'm ready for piece 3, and I have a perfect 1/4 inch. So piece 3 is going to be the same basic size as piece 2 on this particular one. Now, when I trimmed that, it gave me that perfect 1/4 inch. It also gave me a straight line to line up piece number 3. So I take piece number 3 and I line it up right on that perfect 1/4 inch. And I know that when I flip it open, I'm going to cover all of my piece 3. So I take it to the machine. Voila! There's my piece between 2 and 3. And I flip it open and it covers all of piece 3. So I've trimmed and I've sewn, and now I'm going to press. And again, you make sure that you get a nice clean press, because you can't go back and fix it. Now this is subunit 1. Subunit 1 is now done. So now I'm going to use my Creative Grids ruler, and I'm going to trim basically on the dotted line. But I always put my 1/4 inch on my last dark line and make sure that that selvage is a 1/4 inch. So there is my clean cut first section.